Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, we will learn about useReducer hook. So, what is useReducer hook? useReducer hook is used in state management like useState hook. But, useReducer is used for complex state logic which usually involves multiple sub-values that are related to each other and needs to be updated together. Let's first understand syntax for the same. Hook returns two parameters, state and dispatch. State is the current state of variable. Dispatch is the function that sends action which triggers state change. Initial state is the initial value of the state. Reducer is pure function, it determines how state changes based on action. Reducer takes two parameters, state and action. State takes the current state and action describes what changes you want. Now, let's understand useReducer with examples. First, we will see example of form with multiple fields with useState. Then same example we will code with useReducer. So, that we can better understand the usage of useReducer. Let's create a component with username, roll number and department code as fields for student form. I have created a component here named forms with useState. This has multiple states to show values and errors of all fields. For example, for username a setter to set value and another to set error if username already exists. Like this it created for other fields too. Now, here in return of component, form is created with submit method and first field username created with onChange event. And an error of username displayed if username exists. Now, we will create other fields as well in same manner and then we'll create input change method and validate method to check if error exists. For roll number same way input control created. Same as for department code as well. A button is created which will be disabled if form details are invalid. Let's create input change method. In this method we are checking what value is entered in field. As you can see there are setters created for each of the field. Now, let's create validate function. In this, we will check if username already exists and roll number should be number type only and department code should be of length 3. And in handle submit we are printing the data. Now, let's check output. This is the output with valid values and no errors. This is the output with invalid values and errors being displayed and submit button disabled. So, now you must be thinking what is the issue with using useState then and why we need to use useReducer instead. The issue is as you can see here, there are multiple states created. In this example, there are only 3 fields. What if we have to create an entire student form which has 15 to 20 fields? Then in that case, the setter function will be constantly repeated and also it would be scattered. Also, it will increase the lines of code of component. And good coding practice is to have 150 to 200 lines of code in a component, which will get affected due to this scenario. Whereas, useReducer will be more modularized as reducer function will be in separate file. And from above example value and error we can update in one action together. Let's see this with example. We will refactor same example with useReducer. Now, first we will create a separate file which will have reducer function code. As already mentioned, reducer takes a state and action. Here, first input change action created. Here, only one action is enough to handle input change logic for any number of fields. Whereas, as you remember multiple if else were required, if block for each field to be precise in useState. Thus, useReducer will reduce number of lines of code and make it more modularized. Same way, we will write action for other scenarios like isSubmitting and all. Now, we have called useReducer function and dispatched input change action which we created in reducer function. Also, initial state created which would be used in useReducer. Now, we have created submit function and dispatched submit action which we created in reducer function. Now, input fields will be created same as useState except here state. Username that is the respective field name will be called. Same way we will create for roll number. And for department code. Now, let's check the output for the same. As we can see it is creating same output as useState created. But big difference is modularity in code. And also as we can see above we updated fields and error both in one action so it provides atomic update. Thus, it reduces calling multiple setter functions for one change. As you can see here, on left-hand side it is reducer code and on right it is state. And you can see for useState code, if we would have had multiple fields, we would have had to call those many if else. But with useReducer we can use the same exact input change no matter how many fields we add. Now, let's see a simple counter example with both useState and useReducer. So, first we have created increment and decrement by and reset functions as shown. Now, let's call these functions on respective button to increment and decrement by specified number. Let's click on increment by 2 and then decrement by 6 and so on to check outputs. Let's see some example with reducer. Let's create actions first as shown. Now, here we have created increment, then decrement and reset as well in reducer. Now call this functions in component as shown. Let's create buttons in the component now to increment and decrement. Let's click on increment by 2 and then decrement by 6 and so on to check outputs. As you can see, the output for both useReducer and useState was same, but consider a bigger example which is based on this increment and decrement like shopping cart. There are a lot of actions will be performed in faster successions and we will have to use functional updates only in useState. Otherwise, we might get a stale state. This, I have already explained in my video on useState. I will give link for that in description. Do check that out to understand more about functional updates. As you can see in our counter example, we have used functional state updates like below. So, imagine you have many states or shopping cart like example. Then it will be cumbersome to use useState hook. These are the cases where useReducer shines. Because useReducer always gets latest state. With useState functional updates, we can get latest state. But if state is nested and more complex, then it gets messy. So, that is it for useReducer. Let's quickly summarize what we learnt. We have seen syntax of useReducer, where and how it is used and where it should be used over useState. Let's quickly see some comparison points of them. So, I have compared useState and useReducer based on 3 common scenarios and when to use what. As you can see, for complex logic and multiple fields and states depending on previous state, useReducer shines. But for trivial cases it's overhead. So, use useState at that time. So, that is all for useReducer. I have explained useReducer comparing with useState. Because, I often used to get confused if we have one hook like useState to already manage state in functional components. Then, why need of useReducer? Thus, have tried to explain it using scenarios where which one shines over the other. So, that is all for today's video. I will meet you in another video with some other hooks or some other topics in React. Or if you have any topic in mind which I can teach you, then let me know in comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notification of all my videos, and also share it with your friends who wants to learn React and do like the video. So, well, bye bye for now. Happy coding.